Well, it's that time once again. What time you say? Best Ball is back. The pre-draft Best Ball contests are up and running on Underdog, highlighted by the big board contests. And we are jumping headfirst into the deep end of the pool, but we are cruising down these Best Ball streets because we're taking our time to research the landscape, observe what's going on in these streets. And so we're bringing you a best ball strategy session because if you don't have a plan, you're planning to fail. And that goes with anything. And so as we enter this best ball landscape for the 2026 season, so we're coming with our roadmap to week 17 here in these big board contests over here on Underdog. We are gentle and blissful, gifted and beautiful, generous and benevolent, and most appreciatively, we are grateful and blessed. It's your boy, Yuungmoolahh, guidelines to achieve and build GAB Sports. Yes, we have strategy, man. That's the key thing of how you're going to win these contests. It's with strategy. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump into the video, our first strategy session in a series of them throughout this best ball season. Welcome back to GAB Sports Guidelines to Achieve and Build. It's your boy Yuungmoolahh, and we're going to jump into some best ball talk. As you know, the 2026 pre-draft best ball contests have been released over here on Underdog, which is our favorite site for best ball, and we are going to go ahead and jump into that. Talk about our approach and how we do things as we enter another season of best ball, with the regular season still not completed for 2025. Well, the playoffs aren't completed. The Super Bowl is yet to be played. This is when we're filming this video during Super Bowl week. We just want to go ahead and kindly ask you to follow us on all the social media platforms over here on X, on Instagram. Also, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel here at GAB Sports. Where do we want to start with this? Right? We want to start in the trenches, right? We're starting at the ground floor, right? So, as they say in the racing world, racers, start your engines, right? You got to start your engine up before you can even get in the race, right? And that's kind of a thing that I want to stress is that I just don't jump head first into just doing a million drafts. Yeah, I'm doing a few drafts so far comparatively, right? I got maybe 15 drafts, 12. I think I got 4 slows going. So I got like 16 drafts in so far. And we're a week into the contest being released. And so that's where we kind of want to start, is that this is a very long process, very lengthy, fluid process. And this is just the beginning of that process, the start of pre-draft baseball. There's a ton of information yet to be gathered, tons of events that need to take place. We just completed the Senior Bowl. There's still to come the Combine. There's still to come free agency. That's early March, March 11th, I believe, is free agency. The Combine will be, I think, slightly ahead of that. Sometime late February, early March, I believe is usually the Combine time, if I'm not mistaken. And then we're gonna have all those workouts, the prospect workouts, right? But free agency is a really key point because that is where a lot of things are determined ahead of teams drafting, right? If needs are filled in free agency, that draft capital may be used on other positions that really doesn't help us in fantasy, right? A team may load up on their defense in the draft, right? Which for fantasy purposes, loading up on the team's defense doesn't really help us per se in fantasy. So those are things we need to be cognizant of. So my message is we're bringing out the caution flag, right? Slow down. There's no need to rush and try to just complete a ton of drafts right now at this point because the edges, assumed edges that everyone believes that they have, we all think we got great player takes. We all think that we have great analysis of the rookies. We always think that our information, our due diligence, gives us this supreme edge. That's not necessarily the case, and oftentimes it's not the case, right? I believe, and results have shown, the thing that gives you the biggest edge is your strategy at this point. Everybody's drafting kind of by the ADP, the market ADP, and then you're trying to locate some of the discount discounted ADPs and players who you think are just mispriced. You're trying to identify those based on how you project them, right? And so there's plenty of projections that come out, rankings, from different, outlets. These are all fine and dandy. But the thing that separates the drafters right now is the process. And the process is gathering as much information as you can and strategizing how you want to really approach the contest versus the field. All about the strategy, right? I mean, because this process is it's always evolving, right? And your preparation in this process can and should be tedious. You should be going down these rabbit holes of uncovering these rookie prospects. You should be doing that. And in my opinion, that gives you just knowledge, a base knowledge, right? Because the rookies have been added to the field, and your take on these rookies is going to be different than other people's takes, right? And we all trust, the people who are serious about this, we all trust our takes one way or another, but player takes in general are wrong. I mean, everybody, you know, we can all have these player takes, and we like to think that we hit more often than not. In general, our player takes aren't as good as we believe that they are. And so that really isn't the edge, especially right now when teams are unsettled with a lot of things, with coaching hires. Some people don't even have offense coordinators, and philosophies and cultures haven't even been built on a lot of these teams. There was massive turnover in the coaching ranks this offseason without a lot of great candidates to fill many of these roles. And so, in my opinion, there's going to be a lot of uncertainty as far as how teams will operate and function on offense, especially in 2026 moving forward. So proceed with caution and do your due diligence are the two things that I would stress and that I am practicing myself. And with that, just to show you some of the preparation that is needed for uh, these contests, for this endeavor of pre-draft best ball, when we have the least amount of information of teams. Are you up for this task, right? Uh, you know, because these tasks include many of details, right? I mean, we have, look what I've listed here. We have rookie analysis, free agency tracking and signings, right? Coaching philosophy, team needs, uh, available salary cap space, injury updates, schedule analysis. I'm even talking right now, like just looking at the opponents, right? And we'll talk more about that as we continue this series of Roadmap to Week 17. And uh, in our upcoming volumes, where we talk more of specific strategy, how I'm even correlating schedules right now before the schedule even comes out, just by opponents, right? And much more, right? This is I haven't even mentioned drafting analysis, right? While you're drafting, to analyze the ADPs and the rankings and all that. So as you're doing these drafts here in the early going, these are some of the things that just you should be doing just on the side in conjunction with drafting, right? There's just a few things that you should be doing, right? And looking at historical trends. A lot of people look at historical trends, right? That's things that, historical data that gives you somewhat of an edge, right? Things like that. So there's a lot of ingredients that goes into this, making this dish here, which we call best ball, right? And it's an ever evolving fluid. I would say it's just changing, right? It's a changing process, and there's no one particular outlook, one particular strategy that is the quote unquote winning strategy. Who knows, right? So I prefer to just look at it from a game theory perspective. I'm a game theorist by nature. And so when I'm looking at it like that, I know that there's lots of ways to get to the top. And one of them is definitely preparing with due diligence and not following the herd mentality. So I'm an observer and I like to observe what a lot of people are doing, what the masses are doing. And if the masses are all just going one way, the quickest way to get to the top is subvert that and find your own lane that gets you to the top without being too wacky. There's a way to be unique without just being, so super risky that you can find a uniqueness in your strategy without being just so far off the reservation that it just has no shot, right? You're not just gambling and taking some far-fetched, uh, outlandish path to try to get there. You're just being a little more contrarian than the rest of everybody, right? Than the masses. All right. And so, with that being said, we want to go ahead into some takes that we have. And our first one being coaching changes. These I've identified the 5 top coaching changes, in my opinion, that will impact us positively or negatively, hopefully positively, in best ball that right now, right? So these are things I'm keeping in my mind as I'm drafting even right now. Do I like these situations? Do I like um, the dynamics with the way the coach can get the most out of players? Do I like the kind of offenses fit the skill sets of the existing players? Because I don't know what the future players are going to be, right? We don't know who they're going to draft, who they're going to bring in free agency. I just got to go with what I know at this point, which are sure things that these people on the team, they're under contract. And so, do these coaching philosophies, mesh with the existing personnel, right? So, coming in at number 5, best offseason coaching change. We are coming with the Atlanta Falcons. Yes, the Atlanta Falcons coming in at number 5. They moved on from Raheem Morris and company with Zach Robinson calling the shots. And frankly, I was disappointed with how Atlanta performed last year as a whole. I think they underperformed. And so I think there's pretty much nowhere to go but up, other than Bijan Robinson, who had a spectacular season, right? He's the number one stunner coming into 2026. The rest of this offense lagged behind expectations. And so, with the addition of Stefanski, who I believe is replacing the guy calling the plays last year, Zach Robinson, who I believe was overrated. Stefanski, though, my opinion, he has a proven offensive system. He's had some good offenses there in Cleveland during his tenure there, and I believe he can come in here and institute a system that will allow these young players to flourish. Hopefully they bring back a guy like a Kyle Pitts, right? And I think they need to upgrade at the receiver spot, alongside Drake London. I think they need some other weapons. But hopefully they'll identify those things. And because the quarterback position is definitely a question mark with Kirk Cousins and a young Michael Penix, who's coming off a big injury. But Kevin Stefanski has been typically a coach who maximizes his quarterback production. And uncharacteristically, that was not the case last season in Cleveland. But there may be some underlying factors of why that occurred like that, where it was pretty underwhelming. His offense was typically not the case. He usually has solid offenses. So I look for Kevin Stefanski to implement a pretty good structure here of offense for the Atlanta Falcons, and they're coming in as my fifth best coaching change this offseason. All right, coming in at number 4, we will turn to the Philadelphia Eagles. Yeah, coaching changes is not necessarily just the head coach, right? We're looking at coordinators, right? These are positions that can impact our fantasy outlook. And so, Kevin Patullo was, I mean, to put it bluntly, he was horrible. I mean, there's no way around it. He was very predictable, unimaginative, and it was just a disaster last year in Philadelphia for this Eagles offense who was coming off of a Super Bowl. They were a very high scoring team in 2024 and 2025. They were one of the worst teams, maybe ranked like 19th or something. And that's just inexcusable to me with the talent that they have there. So bringing in a guy like Mannion to replace Patullo is an automatic upgrade. Yeah, I don't care that Mannion doesn't have much experience in the way of offensive coordinator experience or play calling experience. One thing that I put a lot of emphasis on is that these young guys who have played quarterback, the Kellen Moores when he first got started, the Davis Webbs who's getting a lot of attention right now. But, a guy like Sean Mannion, he played quarterback, right, for the Rams, I believe, in Green Bay. And so these kind of guys who have played the position of quarterback and are considered to be pretty bright minds, right? They stuck around in the league several years, and then they started working immediately as these quarterback coach and assistant quarterback coaches and things like that. When you identify these kinds of minds, sometimes it's fine to, you just go ahead and give them a shot, right? Because they are coming with a fresh approach a lot of times. They're not bogged down by this historical uh, pressure to perform a certain way. These are the new ideas coming into the league that are needed right now. These new minds, new approaches. They can relate to players oftentimes a lot better because they're not much older than some of the guys who are playing, right? Uh, Case in point, the Baltimore Ravens, right? Who I may get to in this list. Their coordinator is 29. He's the same age as Lamar Jackson, right? And so these guys, may have a penchant to be able to relate a little bit more readily to these young superstar players and some of these diva stars, right? Like an AJ Brown, right? Who was melting down a lot on the sidelines, things like that. And so maybe these guys can reach those guys a little easier because they're their peers basically, age wise and they're contemporaries when he probably was playing when these guys were playing. He probably was still a player, Sean Mannion. I mean, I don't know his exact age, but he's not too far removed from playing. And I think that gives these young guys who don't have the experience per se an edge um, in these positions. So I look for the Philadelphia Eagles to bounce back. That's one of my bounce back teams as far as offensively heading into this 2026 season. I think they're in store for a really nice season here under Sean Mannion. And I am liking this coaching change. So it's coming in as my fourth best coaching change this offseason. The Philadelphia Eagles with Sean Mannion as offensive coordinator. Coming in number 3, top coaching changes this offseason. Yeah, we're rolling with the Detroit Lions on this one. Yeah, because John Morton replacing Ben Johnson just didn't work out, right? There was something lost here. I know there was some offensive line losses that they also had that contributed to this. So again, I'm not placing all the blame. I'm not going to place the entire blame of a situation on just a coordinator or a head coach of why things fail. But sometimes change is necessary if you're not getting the results that you
frankly expect to get. And such a high-powered team like the Lions, they had way too many struggles on offense in 2025 for this type of personnel. I mean, they were humming the past couple of years on offense, and for them to just take a step back as they did is just unacceptable. And maybe the fit for Morton and Campbell just wasn't there. And one thing that I do like here, the fit and philosophies with Drew Petzing and Dan Campbell appear to be a good fit on the surface, and that Petzing is a very good run game coordinator, right? His running games in Arizona were very undervalued. I know they didn't really show much this year, but they had tons of injuries, right? And the offensive line actually took a step back. But the injuries they suffered to James Conner and Trey Benson didn't even give them a chance to have a running game. So, but his design of his run games have shown in the past to be very potent. And I think him stepping right into a team who runs the ball very well, and the philosophy of Dan Campbell is to have a run heavy approach and do a lot of play action off that. I think the philosophies match well between offensive coordinator and head coach here with this hire. And yeah, Drew Petzing is underrated. He took a lot of flack first couple of years over there in Arizona, and people were questioning whether this guy was like a Shane Waldron or something. Is he just really a bad coordinator, or were there some other factors at play that held those offenses back? And we can kind of see once Jacoby Brissett got in there and placed Kyler Murray, this team was humming in the passing game. I mean, so analyze it how you want, but I think Drew Petzing is an underrated offensive mind here, and I look for him to have plenty of success revitalizing this Detroit Lions offense in 2026. So we're coming in with Detroit Lions, bringing in Drew Petzing in place of John Morton as our number 3 coaching change this offseason for fantasy purposes. Coming in, number 2. How could I not pick this one, right? And yeah, we're all assuming it hasn't been formally announced, but come on, man. This is like death and taxes. Clint Kubiak will be the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. So we're just going to assume that, and that's why we're bringing them as the number 2 selection. Yeah, the Raiders pulled a coup here. They landed the top head coaching candidate on the market. It was without a doubt it's Clint Kubiak. In a market that was relatively weak overall for coaching candidates, but this is a top tier candidate in any year coming off the successes that he's had in consecutive years because he had a very marginally talented New Orleans Saints offense a couple of years ago, and he did some special things, especially early in the season. And the injuries started to catch up with him. Derek Carr got hurt as well as Rashid Shaheed, and so they kind of tailed off a little bit. But you can see the makings of something pretty special there in New Orleans. And then he comes over this year, this past season, to Seattle, and well, you know, they're in the Super Bowl. Yeah, largely because of this guy, right? Because that's one of the few changes. They changed coordinators, offense coordinator. They brought in a few extra players. They brought in Darnold, but this guy is, I would say, the primary catalyst of why they are in the Super Bowl this year. It's because of Clint Kubiak's offense, right? He's maximized a guy like JSN. Yeah, they pushed a couple guys out of the door, which was DK Metcalf and Geno Smith, and they brought in Sam Darnold and elevated JSN to the number 1 spot. And JSN flourished under this guy. And so I look at the structure of Clint Kubiak's offense, his blend of run pass game in this West Coast style that he got from his dad, Gary Kubiak. Right? The Kubiaks have been around a long time. They're like the Shanahans, you know, these kinds of the Grudens. These dudes they have a particular way of doing stuff, and it is shown to be successful. So I look at Clint Kubiak. Whoever got Clint Kubiak was definitely going to be on this list, and it so happens to be the Raiders, who have the type of weapons this guy can utilize, right? Because if you look at when he was in New Orleans, the tight end usage, right? They got a lot of those out of those tight ends when he was there, right? They had three tight ends that all performed well, in that system, and that was Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau, as well as Taysom Hill. They all had moments to really shine and get good utilization. So a guy like Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer, I believe a lot of people are speculating they may trade this guy. Why? Why are you going to trade Michael Mayer when you're bringing in a head coach who utilizes multiple tight ends a lot? He just didn't have the numbers over here in Seattle. He was trying to use Arroyo and Garner, not Garner, Barner, AJ Barner. He tried to utilize those dudes together a lot, but their personnel wasn't quite suited, and then Arroyo got hurt. So they don't quite have the personnel, but with the Raiders, he's going to have two good tight ends, right? And so I think they keep Michael Mayer, right? What's need to trade him? They got plenty of draft choices this year, and they also have plenty of cap space, 90 million in cap space to bring in free agents and stuff like that. So I don't think they need to use Michael Mayer as a trade piece. They're going to use him as a key piece in this offense in their 12 personnel packages, right? So, and they also have a top tier running back, an expert in utilizing the running back position, right? He gets the most out of the running backs as well. So things are looking way up for the Las Vegas Raiders with this hire of Clint Kubiak. And word is he's probably going to bring over the offensive line coach currently of the Seattle Seahawks because he's a guy who also was in New Orleans with Kubiak, and then he followed him over to Seattle. So there seems to be a pretty good relationship there. So he'll probably be coming along well. And this is a guy who uh, got that, he whipped that Seattle offensive line into shape, who was one of the worst lines in the league the past couple of years. And, they're very respectable. They're not an elite offensive line this year, but they're much better than they had been over the past couple of years. So that will also be a big benefit to him if he can uh, bring that gentleman along too. As the number one all-season coaching change for our best ball purposes, we're going to roll with this. Yes, it's the Los Angeles Chargers. Absolutely love the hiring of Mike McDaniel as offensive coordinator. You can say all you want about Mike McDaniel. He's a quirky guy. He's not a real leader. But I'll be damned if you can talk about his play calling and the way he designs offense. I believe this guy was extremely handcuffed by Tua Tagovailoa, who's just really regressing and is not that good. He never really was that good, in my opinion, in that draft. I got friends who vouch for this. As soon as they made the pick, I said they should be taking Herbert. Herbert is the next best quarterback. They took Tua Tagovailoa over Justin Herbert in that draft, and I was instantly opposed to that. And well, he's got his wish now because he wasn't there when they drafted Tua, but at least he understands too that Herbert is just miles better than Tua Tagovailoa, and you can see in the excitement that Mike McDaniel has exhibited since he's been hired, and just gushing over a guy like Justin Herbert. So he's going to be excited to work with this guy. I think his offense is a very explosive offense, and you'll get to see a lot more of that explosion. I mean, you saw it that first year, and then teams kind of adjusted to Tua. That's what they really adjusted to. They didn't adjust to Mike McDaniel. They adjusted to Tua's limitations, who he couldn't really push the ball down the field. And one thing about Mike McDaniel that everybody may be forgetting, he's going to push the ball down the field. He just didn't have the quarterback to do it. But Justin Herbert, one of the biggest arms in the league, can sling that ball downfield, man. And they got a lot of young, fast weapons. So this is definitely a great hire to bring in McDaniel. I think it's the perfect fit for his kind of design. If you look at his first couple years, I mean, we saw some spectacular MVP type potential in this guy. And it was like year one, year two, maybe even year three. During those early years of Herbert, he looked fantastic, man. I think that was under Steichen, maybe. And there was a lot of potential for this guy. And then ever since then, we've kind of haven't had that same kind of, I guess, offensive structure nor play calling to kind of keep him on that track of being amongst the elite. But I look for Herbert to be really unleashed here with a lot of ingenuity and creativity from a guy like Mike McDaniel, excuse me. And he's our number one offseason coaching change, Predraft Best Ball 2026. Mike McDaniel for the Los Angeles Chargers. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and drop another top five list. I like to do top five lists. If you follow any of my content, I do a lot of top five things that I analyze and then I break it down into what are the five best situations, right? Talk about the top five things that are not what they seem. And what do I mean by that? A lot of times when we come off of a season, we're looking at things in a lens that is not a clear lens. It doesn't include all the circumstances, all the dynamics that really came into play for a certain thing to happen, right? So you'll see what I'm talking about as we go through this list. But some things aren't what they seem. And a lot of times, people are going to be overvalued or undervalued based on things not appearing really how they are. So, heading into 2026, pre-draft at this early stage, February 2nd, right? We want to look at some things that are these mirages or are they real, right? And so, coming in, the top five things are not what they seem. We have the Denver Broncos. Why do I say the Denver Broncos? I just can't trust Sean Payton. He's constantly shown us over and over and over again. We don't know what you're going to do with your personnel, Sean. What are you going to do, man? Right? You go sign Evan Ingram, and you say, wow, this guy's a joker. This guy's going to be heavily utilized. We are going to utilize this guy. Season starts, this guy gets nothing, right? He's an afterthought in the offense, right? You draft Marvin Mims a couple years ago, and then like the third round, or was he even a second round? I don't know. I don't remember quite frankly. He was a high draft pick, I believe second round, late second, early third, something like that. Okay, there's a lot of hype. Marvin Mims, pretty good prospect, pretty highly talented prospect, a lot of talent, a lot of speed, a lot of juice. He just refuses to utilize the guy, right? I mean, then you draft R.J. Harvey, right? There's all this talk. Oh, R.J. Harvey's just gonna be the man, right? He's gonna just light it up. He's our joker, this or that. This guy's not a. He takes a back seat to J.K. Dobbins, right? J.K. Dobbins far outplayed this guy. And so my point is, you just can't trust the Denver Broncos situation. Too deep of a rotation of players that Sean Payton always. He plays little Jordan Humphrey. He plays dudes like that, right? A couple years ago it was Vele. Uh, you know, it's just he throws too many guys in the mix. These Jaleel McLaughlins and Tyler Baddies, and it's just there's no pecking order at running back nor wide receiver for us to trust anything that Sean Payton says or does. So things not being what they seem, we're coming in with the Denver Broncos. It's your guess as good as mine who to like this year for the Denver Broncos. But I guarantee I won't be taking RJ Harvey at his inflated price. I guarantee that. And especially if they bring back J.K. Dobbins. I mean, literally, J.K. Dobbins outplayed him last year. So just be on the lookout for that. J.K. Dobbins comes back, or even if he doesn't, I still don't trust R.J. Harvey because I don't trust Sean Payton. The number five, things are not what they seem. The Denver Broncos, good team, solid team. Just don't trust them for fantasy. All right. Coming in, number four, things are not what they seem. Yeah, surprised to see this one, aren't you? Yeah, the Chicago Bears. Things are not what they seem here in Chicago. Why? Is this offense underrated or are they overrated, right? I mean, it's hard to tell, right? Which one is it? Are they ready to just really explode year of Ben Johnson at the helm, or are they overrated, right? I mean, they if you look at all their fantasy success, it kind of came in bunches. A lot of it toward the end when they were the cardiac kids coming back, from deficits a lot of times, and then they would get there. And then you have to also take into consideration the guy who started off very fast, Roma Dunze, was hurt for much of the season, right? And so that gave opportunity for other guys to flourish and shine in his absence. Okay, so what if he comes back fully healthy now all of a sudden? And the assumption is DJ Moore is out the door. Do we know this for sure? He's still under contract. What if they decide to give him another shot? You know, we don't know. So even if that's the case, you have six, count them, six Chicago Bears being drafted in the top 86. What you talking about, Willis? What the fuck is going on right here? How the hell you got six players in the top 7 rounds, basically, right? Six players are going to pay off the price from one offense. You got Caleb Williams, you got the two running backs, and then you got three receivers: Odunze, uh, Burden, as well as Colson Loveland, the tight end. I'm not even counting DJ Moore in case he just happens to come back, right? Six players are not paying off those price tags in fantasy of all being taken within the top 7 rounds. Six players cannot pay that off. It just can't happen on one offense. Never does, right? I mean, just look at the volume of numbers. It's impossible. So something's wrong here in Chicago. I'm not saying that they're a bad team, of course. I would love to have a lot of Chicago Bears, but at these current prices, it's not worth it. You just can't pay this off. So, are you going to pick and choose which ones you think are the ones that are going to pay off? Good luck, because they're all pretty much overvalued, from the quarterback to the running backs to all the receivers, other than DJ Moore, who might be on the way out. But DJ Moore is the only one that's not overvalued. He's probably properly valued. So that's just my take on things for the Chicago Bears. Great offense. Well, good offense. Wouldn't say great yet. And if Caleb can make that leap, it will be a very good offense. But they're all overvalued because there's too many of them there. It's a very crowded situation. And it's just not happening at these prices. I got to see some severe drops in ADP for me to go gung ho on these players. Now, do I have a few shares of this guy, a couple shares of this guy? Maybe, yeah, I do. I'm not going to say I've ignored the Bears, but I don't. I'm not gung ho for them, and I'm not overloaded. I will be definitely underweight at these prices in this contest, the pre-draft contest for the Chicago Bears. All right, that was my number 4. Things are not what they seem. Coming in number 3 on the 5 things that are not what they seem. The Indianapolis Colts hit the list. Yeah, why? There's just too many unanswered questions. You don't have a quarterback at this point. We don't know the timetable of Daniel Jones. It could be, week 6, 8. I don't know. Just do a little stint on the pup, 4 weeks, and then he's back. Who knows? But then is he going to be the same Daniel Jones when he comes back? Coming off of an Achilles tear. Achilles tear, trust me, from a guy who's had an Achilles tear, is not an easy recovery to regain any kind of movement and explosiveness. And then if you take into account if it's his plant foot, that will make a difference as well, because you just don't have that uh, explosion off of that foot that had the Achilles as you had previously. You just don't. I don't care how modern medicine has changed and all that. as you age, especially, these guys aren't 21, 19. They're like 30 something years old. That Achilles recovery and rebound is you're just never going to be as explosive as you once were. And Daniel Jones does rely a little bit on his running ability and mobility. So we'll see how that works out. But at this point, the quarterback situation is definitely unsettled. They have a couple receivers, guys like Alec Pierce, and Michael Pittman. There's questions whether they're gonna, go with those guys. Well, I don't know. Are they? Who knows? So we go ahead and see how that plays out. Hey, the ownership. I mean, I hate to be the one to say it. I'm not being for anybody says something. I'm not being sexist or anything like that. Uh, but the lady that seems a little bit wacky to me. I mean, just the fact that in these press conferences, just the tone of what you're saying, apologizing to the fans for not getting the job done as you wanted to because you started off a certain way. Everybody saw what happened. You lost your quarterback. Shit. Excuse my French, but you don't have to apologize for that happens. And then you're wearing a headset on the sideline, listening to the play calls and all. What the hell is that about? You don't know what they're saying. You don't even know. Just let the people you hire do their job. It's just kind of a weird situation over there. And I think that can impact decision making, right? As far as who you're going to play at quarterback, things like that. Because, they had a guy, Anthony Richardson. I think he probably could have played at some point, but they decided to, IR this guy. And once Daniel Jones got hurt, this guy wasn't available for them. He probably could have came back. But the way they handled the whole situation, it just reeks of a strange situation in management. That's all I'll say. All right. And so Indianapolis Colts coming in at number 3 for the things that are not what they seem. Coming in at number 2, we got the Arizona Cardinals, right? Is this offense sustainable the way that things happened? I mean, just look at it. Everybody's going berserk over the Trey McBride and season. I'll get to another thing that people are just way overvaluing with this team. But the Trey McBride season, okay, yeah. You were in a lot of trail situations where there was a lot of garbage time production. And also, Kyler Murray was your quarterback. You had never done anything like this with Kyler Murray. So the fact that Kyler Murray was removed from the situation, right? And not only Kyler Murray was removed from the situation, Marvin Harrison barely played for this team this year, right? Which brings me to Michael Wilson. Michael Wilson is going like, I believe, in the early mid sixth round in drafts. Are you kidding me? Michael Wilson going in the sixth round in best ball drafts? What? People have lost their mind. This is honestly, Michael Wilson. I'm sure he's a good guy, right? Decent player, but sixth round value when, like I said, Kyler Murray was your quarterback. Marvin Harrison did not play. These guys were removed from the equation. You think that's going to be the same situation? We don't know if Kyler Murray is going to be pushed out the door here. He could. The new coach might want to work with Kyler Murray, so he could be reinstalled as the quarterback. And more importantly, Marvin Harrison is returning as your alpha receiver that you drafted him to be the alpha. You think you're just going to push him to the side because of Michael Wilson all of a sudden? I don't know. So the perfect storm that came together for this Arizona offense in 2025 has people just thinking that this is sustainable. I don't believe it is because the fact that you were in trail situations the whole season, the whole season, every game, they're down by 20 every game. And then so they're just throwing 45, 50 times every game. Come on. Yeah, you're going to get inflated stats. And then you add the fact that you consolidated the targets because all the receivers were pretty much out. Dortch was out. Even Dortch was out. Harrison was out. And then all you had, you didn't have any running backs. You only had Trey McBride and Michael Wilson. So yeah, you're gonna get all this concentration of targets. You're gonna get all this uh, production, right? And garbage time. So that's the thing that just doesn't add up, right? And now you're valuing these dudes improperly, right? McBride's going way too high. We saw last year that tight ends going this high is not the best value. So through 16 drafts, I got zero McBride. I don't even have any Bowers. So right now, I'm kind of lukewarm on the tight end values right now. That's another story. But just getting back to Arizona, it was the perfect storm for Arizona. I don't see this as a repeatable, sustainable situation. And frankly, I think Kyler Murray probably, if I'm leaning now, I think he's back as the starting quarterback for your Arizona Cardinals. And then, to me, you have a sketchy head coaching hire, right? Yeah, I'm going to say it. Matt LaFleur's little brother, Mike LaFleur, why are you getting a job here? Because frankly, there weren't many candidates left. And but his resume doesn't scream that he's ready for a head coaching job. And yeah, like I said earlier, there are certain situations where you can take a risk on a guy, but that's usually with a coordinator position. As the head coach, taking a risk is a whole different animal. And I don't see Mike LaFleur as being actually ready for this opportunity. He can prove me wrong. Go ahead. I would like for you to prove me wrong, buddy, because I do like Marvin Harrison on this team in fantasy. So I want you to prove me wrong. But I just don't think it was a great hire. And so the Arizona Cardinals are coming in as my second. Things are not what they seem heading into 2026 pre-draft best ball. All right. The number one, things are not what they seem. We're going to land on the Jacksonville Jaguars. Yes, I'm picking on some of the good teams here. No doubt about it. Why? It's a similar to the Chicago Bears. A lot of similar things of that. Because right now, you got a lot of their players that are all bunched together. I mean, look at all these receivers that are bunched together in ADP with Parker Washington, BTJ, and Jacoby Myers. All three of those guys aren't going to pay off these prices. And guess what? Travis Henry was not in the fold last year for much of the season. He played maybe 3 games. And he was starting to look like possibly your best receiver. So people are speculating he's not going to play receiver. We don't know this. We can speculate all we want that he probably won't play receiver because they have these other receivers. If he's your best receiver, he still might play receiver, right? So I don't like the values here on what's going on here in Jacksonville. It's a good team, very good team. But what if Travis played in 2025? What if Parker Washington have lit up the scene again? A guy who benefited from injuries. I'm not saying Parker Washington's not a decent player. He's pretty good. He's not worth what he's going right now. He's just simply not because Travis Hunter wasn't there, right? So I'm looking at things with a different lens here going into 2026. And then you look at the backfield, right? Before I end this, we're looking at the backfield. Travis Etienne is a free agent, right? Maybe he comes back, maybe he doesn't. So we don't know where to go right now at this point in time. That's why this is a fluid process of best ball. And so the prices that you're getting these guys at right now, they could be very overvalued, right? Especially if they re-sign Etienne. You're putting 2 running backs in the top 70. That never works out. Um, if he comes back, and then you have an overcrowded wide receiver room if Hunter is put into the mix here with the already existing 3 receivers. So things aren't what they seem here in Jacksonville for best ball pre-draft right now. Until there's a little clarity, I'm pretty much staying away from most of these guys. I do have a card up my sleeve that I am playing for Jacksonville, and I'll get to that later. But it's speculative too, but I'm playing it. But those are my 5 top things that are not what they seem. All right.
You have our first edition, volume 1 of our roadmap to week 17 for these big board contests here in the pre-draft season of best ball. And yeah, that's like I said, take it with a grain of salt, word of caution. Season ahead, and we have plenty of time to do these drafts and just allow the information to keep coming in and decipher that information as you will need to benefit you in these contests. So we'll go ahead and be on the lookout for volume 2, where we go deeper into this best ball strategy, get into the mind of what we're thinking here, and we'll identify some of our targets as well here in the other going. But we want to take this time to sign out. So on your way out, please subscribe to our channel, like the video. Also, feel free to leave a comment. And once again, follow us on social media at GAB4Young. That's GAB4YUUNG. Good luck to you all. And racers, also known as best ballers, start your engines. Peace.